profit from the royal family's property and land holdings has more than doubled to a record £1.1 billion. That's according to Buckingham Palace's annual accounts.
Well, the report includes the cost of the coronation and all the visits made by the royals over the last year. Interesting to note, fewer foreign trips were made in the year to March 2024, of course reflecting a need to stay closer to home during a period in which both the King and the Princess of Wales has spent time in hospital for cancer treatment.
I was also reading that the King has done a whopping 464 engagements in the past year.
Despite
it, yeah.
Amazing.
It's amazing. We're joined now by GBNews national reporter Charlie Peters, who is outside Buckingham Palace for us. Thank you, Charlie, for being there. Break this down for us.
Sure, well, let's start with the expenditure, shall we? From the last year, it was £89.1 million. That's what the royal household spent. And one of the core parts of that expenditure was, of course, their big event last May, the coronation. £800,000 went into that. And then we should look at the engagements. You mentioned the number that King Charles made last year. Well, £4.2 million on those engagements, much of that travel. And then finally, how much that costs us all? Well, it's £1.29 per person. That's the cost of the monarchy to the taxpayer. But that really hides the truth of how that cash comes about, because all of the money that the royal household spends is actually theirs being given back to them by the Treasury. It comes from the Crown Estate surplus. That's a £16 billion portfolio they have. And their sovereign grant is made up of the surplus from 2 years prior. So in the year to 2022, there was about £350 million knocking around from the surplus. That was given all to the Treasury, and they were given back 15% as their core sovereign grant. Additional 10% was given towards the resurfacing of Buckingham Palace. That's been going on since Parliament voted on it in 2017. It's expected to take 10 years. But all in all, that's been about £86.3 million. And as you heard, the expenditure was £89 million. So how do they mix that gap? How do they close that gap in and cost out? Well, they make their own money as well from additional sources of income. And that was the gates, the receipt to Windsor Castle and their many palaces across the country, where people have paid about £10 million to visit in the last year. So what can we glean also from the detail from this extensive report? Well, of that £4.2 million on official engagements, much of that travel, the most expensive trip last year was to Kenya within that financial year for over £170,000 for the 3-day visit. Bit of context to that, about a decade ago, President Obama made a 3-day visit to Ireland, and that cost just under $8 million. So when you look at how world leaders and the head of state might travel, that does give you some understanding of how cost-conscious the royal family has been and how they manage those costs. And they're looking to go further on reducing not only the financial cost of that travel, but also the environmental cost. So sustainable aviation fuel is going to be increased in the charter flights, and also 2 new helicopters that have been ordered this year for the royal family. We know that King Charles, his Aston Martin, his treasured possession from his 21st birthday, that's been running on cheese and wine through a hybrid biofuel for many decades. Well, it looks like he's now bringing that to his own air fleet.
It's a cheese and wine powered helicopter. I can't think of anything more Charles III, really. Charlie, a lot of people think that, of course, the royal family cost the taxpayer lots of money, but actually they're probably the biggest taxpayers in the country.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. It's 85% tax. If you look at how it works, it's the Crown Estate surplus, all the cash they make through their landed portfolio and property, etc., going to the Treasury, and then a portion of it given back to them. And their income actually for the year just gone has doubled, but we won't see that going into the sovereign grant for another 2 years, because it's always based on the financial year 2 years prior. But how has that income doubled? That's a really important detail. The Crown Estate owns all the seabed of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and that seabed's been increasingly popular for wind farms, and we might see Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary's push for more wind farms to boost the royal coffers in years to come. 1.1 billion the income, mostly driven by that sustainable energy source. But as we said, we won't see that money going out to sort Buckingham Palace at its many costs for a couple more years.
Well, Charlie Peters, thank you very much, live from Buckingham Palace.